Good morning, children. Today we will continue with the poem Dover Beach from where we left yesterday. Now we begin with the second stanza of the poem. The poet says, Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. Now children, poet is standing, as we read in the first stanza, he is standing in front of a window having a view of the Dover beach, and he is hearing those sad notes of the sea. And now, thinking of those sad notes and the grating sound that he hears, he is all of a sudden remembering a Greek author, an ancient Greek author who wrote tragic plays. Now, all of a sudden, the speaker thinks about the ancient Greek playwright named Sophocles, and he imagines that Sophocles heard the same sound as Sophocles stood next to the Aegean Sea. Now, Aegean is that part of the Mediterranean Sea that separates Greece from Turkey. Sophocles was a Greek author who wrote tragic plays. Sophocles is imagining an analogy between human unhappiness and the cloudy, muddy, murky waters that are moving in and out, the ebb and flow, as he terms it. Now the poet says, Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. Now the speaker feels the kind of thoughts that are coming to his mind, the kind of sadness that is creeping into his mind, hearing the sound of the sea as he stands in front of that window. He feels that similarly, when in the past Sophocles long ago would have stood on the shores of the Aegean, it would have brought similar thoughts of sadness, melancholy into his mind as well. And it would have made him think about the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. Now what is turbid? Muddy, murky. And what is ebb and flow? It is that rhythmic, that recurring pattern of coming and going, or decline and regrowth. So you know the waves, it's a recurring process, a process that never ends, a rhythmic process of coming and going. Now as he would have seen this ebb and flow, this recurring pattern of waves coming in and going back, it would have brought into his mind the thoughts of human misery. Now what are the thoughts of human misery? Now human misery is also a recurring pattern, a rhythmic pattern in human life. No human life is without misery. You know, as pattern that like waves come in and go back, similarly misery in human life is a recurring pattern. So it would have made the coming and going of the waves would have made Sophocles think of the ebb and flow, this recurring pattern of human misery in life. The speaker feels that Sophocles heard the sad sounds of the Aegean Sea, and it reminded him of the ebb and flow of human misery. And therefore he wrote tragedies on human misery. Now his dramas would be, full of tragedy, ending in absolute chaos, ending in death of everyone. So he wrote on human misery, and his tragedies were full of human misery. They displayed the human misery. The poet has also found a feeling of sadness hearing similar sound, though he himself is far away from the Aegean Sea. Now he says, We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. Now he himself is standing by this distant northern sea, the poet. The speaker is standing by the distant northern sea, but he feels that his thoughts are akin, alike what Sophocles would have thought long back, as Sophocles stood on the shores of the Aegean Sea.